Thanks everybody for coming tonight. I hope it's been a invigorating conversation so far. I know I've learned a ton. So I'm going to be up here. I'm going to be hosting what we're calling a fireside chat. So we'll all be sitting here talking about different things in fintech and AI. And I'll just let the panel go through and introduce ourselves.
Okay. Dimitri Papakostas. Currently teach at City University, finance and derivatives. My background is in finance. Most of my career spent at JP Morgan, structuring products, running the foreign exchange desk, among other things. In the last few years, I spent at Bloomberg, which is a fintech company.
Hello, everybody. My name is Luca Iandoli. I'm currently serving as the Dean of the College of Professional Studies, which is one of the schools at St. John's. It's the school where we have our largest department on campus for computer science, and of course, AI. My background is in computer engineering, and then I have a PhD in engineering management, so I've been in between these two worlds all my life, predominantly as an academic person. Different universities around the world. I'm Italian, so started my career in Italy, University of Naples, School of Engineering, and then US, different schools here. I think now I'm doing a lot of work on AI, but from the point of view of how it interferes, I'm going to use this word, with pedagogy, and what we have to do about it, because it's a big problem.
Yes.
Agreed. Hi everyone, my name is George Panagiotakopoulos. I work for UC Berkeley. I'm faculty, and I'm also responsible for launching our innovation and entrepreneurship programs internationally. I got there by way of being a failed founder multiple times, a successful one a couple times, so we're trying to balance it out. And I'm lucky enough to know Christina and be part of this fine group. So excited to be on this chat and to hear from you as well.
Some of the stuff we were talking about were specifically how AI is going to affect things like the labor market, finance, and things like that. And one of the questions that we were thinking about is the ethical applications of that. So, for instance, if the market were to crash due to some kind of AI algorithm, who would be responsible for something like that? You have so many people involved, right? You have the owners of the companies, you have the people running the algorithms, you have the people using the technology, and thinking about sort of who do we assign responsibility when we put these systems in charge of some of the massive things that we have going on, and just how do we think about that?
I think that's going a little bit too deep before we get there. Frankly, I think assigning responsibility and assigning basically credit and responsibilities has to start at a different level. I think we need to think societally where we go from here. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Yorgo before, George mentioned that right now our financial system, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say it's captured by 5 people. Literally, 40% of the S&P 500 is 10 companies. 490 companies, can't do math, is 60%. It's a minor part of it. So our system is captured there. The state is also captured with this whole let's invest in AI. This is what drives our government right now in many ways. So that's the level where we will decide, hey, who's responsible? What are we doing with this? And until such time as those institutions that are supposed to be speaking for all of us, take it upon themselves to say, wait a minute. Why are these 7 guys, literally, and it's guys, running the world? Because if we start saying things like that now, you should take responsibility. They're not. They are already doing it. They're saying, let's socialize the externalities, whether it's the massive consumption of energy, the use of water, whatever it is. Let's externalize that, and let's privatize the profit. because Nvidia goes up. I may make some money if I have stock, but I'm not making most of the money. Sam Altman's making the money if AI goes up. So I think that. Forgive me. I think that's not the. I don't think that's the right place to start thinking about responsibility and credit.
Luca, do you have?
I think so. My whole attitude toward AI is to demystify it a little bit. So it's a technology, very interesting, a lot of interesting applications, powerful in many respects, but it's still a technology. I mean, the same name, I don't know if you know the story, but the same name, artificial intelligence, I mean, it's already confusing, right? Because there's no intelligence in there, really. It was basically picked to get a grant because it sounded more sexy. They wanted to call it something else, I don't remember right now. But anyway, the point, going back to your question, is if it's a technology, we are in a world in which you have a lot of complex technologies and systems in which you have a combination of human and technological agency. And it's always like this intersection between the two and the way they are connected. When something bad happens, call it whatever disaster. I used to teach when I was at Stevens a class in which we used organizational disasters as a way to understand what went wrong in the organizations, that made that big disaster. Think of the Challenger explosion or Chernobyl, this big accident where technology fails. But it's not just technology, it's the combination of technology and organization that fails. Now, it's always very difficult to say who's at fault. You have to do a very deep analysis. In fact, in that class, that was the big project for the class. They had to do the whole analysis to understand, with using a number of models, who was at fault. Eventually, of course, it's always some level of human mistake that is amplified and magnified by the system. So ultimately, that's someone who's accountable. Also, in the case of artificial intelligence, there's a lot of talk about agents, and agents means that you build something that is autonomous. An agent, by definition, is a software thing that is able to behave in an autonomous way, right? But that autonomy is never full. There's always some level of human control. Or there's always human design at the beginning of everything. So the fault could be in the control, could be in the design, could be in the combination of the two, could be in other forces, sometimes it's culture. So long story short, there's no single answer to that question because every case is going to be different. Every case will require an investigation. The legal field is full of tools to understand who's at fault. If it's negligence, there's a whole culpability diagram you can build. One test, for instance, is to judge if I'm at fault and I made a mistake on the job, put anybody else under the same condition in the same place with the same level of expertise and knowledge, make the same mistake. If the answer is yes, I'm still negligent, maybe, but it's a degree of culpability that is lower. So when it comes to AI, I would use the same exactly, approach, which again requires a very in-depth analysis to make a diagnosis in terms of who did it, who is at fault.
Well, I wanted to build upon a little bit of what Luca was saying. I think the core tension is, and you kind of alluded to this at the beginning, the core tension is between technological autonomy and human agency, right? So as AI is starting to take on more complex decisions in extremely important areas like healthcare, criminal justice, social services, it's optimizing, it's creating efficiencies, but ethically, it is depriving people of potentially the opportunity to contest impactful decisions. How are you going to argue with AI? I can argue with Luca, even if I know that he's wrong, and and I know he's wrong in something. It doesn't matter what it is. He knows he's wrong. We both know he's wrong, but he wins somehow. I know that he knows that I was right. There is some sort of peace in that. Is that enough? I can't do that with AI. But am I okay with that? Am I okay with losing the opportunity to be able to contest things, whether I win or not? Are you okay with it? So I think one of the questions that we need to start thinking about is, should AI focus on pure, optimization and automation and efficiencies, or should, success, how we define success, constitute an element of how it helps us retain our ability to participate in judgment, to participate in decisions, and therefore perhaps helping us retain our humanity and our dignity. Is that important? Is that important to you? Well, here's a question. There was a study done, I don't remember where, Harvard. Harvard did a study. A Harvard study said, something to the effect, I'm not going to quote it exactly, but they surveyed a ton of people and they asked if you could fly on a plane, either only using only a pilot or only computers, what would you be more comfortable with? And the vast majority said only a pilot. But 9 out of 10 airplane crashes come from human error, not computer or AI or technical error. So I guess the question to you is, how many of you would be more comfortable flying only with a pilot instead of only with a computer? Hands up.
For which one?
Sorry? Oh, you're more comfortable only with a human.
I'm sorry. You're talking about today? Let's say
Today, right now.
Oh, right now.
Today.
Okay.
Only with a human. But so the question is why? When you know that 9 out of 10 airplane crashes come not from human error as opposed to computer, technological, or hardware.
But the questions are valid though, right? Because it's not like we have planes solely flying with autopilot, right? Yeah.
The point is, when you have a decision, you don't always decide what AI will decide, but you feel more comfortable in your ability to be part of that decision. So the answer to your question is, well, kind of is a loaded question, but the angle or the perspective that I'd like people to start thinking about is, how are we, I think we need to start defining what successful implementation, adoption, or usage of AI actually means. And it should include an element of, does it help us preserve our ability to make or participate in the judgments that we live our lives through?
Yeah. And thinking about that, because some of the things we were talking about was AI's impact on the labor market. And I have a couple of friends they have kids who are going to different schools and they're trying to apply to financial firms and they never talk to a human. They send their application in, that gets read by AI, then they get a video that they have to submit some questions to, that's read by AI, and they may never get to talk to a human at all to discuss, that part of it. And I think it's a question of, do you think that is fair to these students, that they don't actually get to have a human evaluate them for these roles? Are we comfortable with technology that's deciding who gets employed and who doesn't? Because there are so many implications of that, right? There are...
Well, if I may, let's answer that. How many are comfortable with that?
With AI deciding.
Only AI deciding if you get a job or not. Hands up if you're comfortable with it. It is happening, but clearly people are not comfortable.
In theory, that would remove bias, right? That people say exists in hiring. So
Except AI is biased by the movement. It's still the hands of the creator are still behind.
well, really, because no, not really, because they actually are introducing bias into it because they don't like some answers that come out. Like when you hear about those where they hard code it, but it's
what you're saying, where people are training it. That's right.
Well, Dimitri, you have...
So I guess what I'm answering is, I'll make it a bit broader. Your question was, is it ethical or fair or just that some people will never speak to an AI? And I would agree with somebody I think said it. It's irrelevant. It is happening. It's a fact of life. And to the previous conversation that was up here, whether it's intelligent or not doesn't matter. I worked for a bank most of my career, right? The top 5 banks in the world employ something like 1.5 million people. 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 of those jobs are operational back office jobs. And I know what those jobs involve, right? They're a human being looking at a confirmation, looking at this, calling Spencer and saying, hey, did you do this deal? Yes, okay. they can be easily boxed, and that's one element. Front office jobs, credit analysis, equity analysis, projections, technical analysis on charts and this and that. There's no question AI will use, maybe illegally, as the good doctor said, all the previous data and copyrighted books, but they will give you that answer. You know, I work for Bloomberg. Bloomberg generates credit reports that are as good as anything I've seen in my professional career. So there's no question that that's happening. These jobs will be lost. However, you know, we compared to the Industrial Revolution, but we got to back off a little bit, right? The Industrial Revolution, people worked 18 hours a day in horrible conditions, and yes, other jobs were created. The buggy, you know, the whip makers potentially found other jobs, but they also worked 40 hours a week, right? As Keynes sort of put it, we're just not going to work as hard. So ultimately, I'm optimistic. It's okay that these jobs will disappear because we will collectively produce enough. The GDP is not going to go down. It's just going to go up. So it's okay. The problem becomes when all of these kids look for jobs, they can't get jobs, and we offer nothing in terms of what happens. How do we socially change our existence to accommodate the fact that they're not going to be all hired, and they're not going to all get jobs as credit analysts. Period.
What are your thoughts?
So, you know, when it comes to the example you just made, so human recruiters are the most biased and fallacious decision makers. There's a ton of studies showing that it's a random process, really. There's a lot of, if it's not random, it's biased, that it's nothing there that works as it's supposed to be. Now, I wouldn't go extreme, though, thinking that we eliminate the human factor from the equation. That happens in our university. Our career service is training students to write resume that AI can read better, to do a video interview that AI can, so do's and don'ts on a video interview when AI is looking at you. But those are screening techniques. The human at some point steps in. So of course, the job market is completely, the job search has been completely destroyed by the internet. LinkedIn is awful, has created a market in which information is so inflated and is so cheap that basically you have to be, if you're in a company, you receive like, let's say, 100,000 application, of which only maybe 1,000 really qualify. And why? Because it doesn't cost anything to anybody to apply with a click. So of course, they need their defenses. They're putting up huge screening wall where they need to screen out. But at some point, you know, they're gonna test for whether the person that's passed the screening is a good match for the job. And primarily, any recruiter is gonna look for someone who I wanna work with, right? Biased as it might be, right? But that's the human side of it. So it's gonna be always an hybrid system in which what is gonna happen is that the AI part is gonna grow, right? There's going to be more of it because, like Dimitri was saying, a lot of jobs are jobs that are based on menial task or something that can be standardized or reproduced. So that part is going to grow. But at the same time, the human part is going to stay because we have no example of full autonomy of AI. You still have someone, like even the pilot, you cannot have you're always going to have a combination of both. Maybe a lot more AI and a lot more automatic pilot and less left to the human pilot, but the human pilot can be there. What is going to happen though is that because we're going to use more of the AI, the productivity of those who have a job will grow significantly. So for those jobs, we're going to need less. It's not that people will be laid off en masse, it's that the nature of the job and the structure of the task will change. So some tasks will stay on the human, like the coding is a good example. So you cannot replace a coder. You can't. But you're going to need maybe only one. Well, back in the day, you would need 10, right? That's where we're going to lose the jobs. But that also translates in a huge productivity increase and a huge money-making machine that can be invested and create new jobs. Where, we don't know.
This conversation sort of makes me think about the effects of like NAFTA, right? And what that had on the Midwest and a lot of these manufacturing towns where it increased GDP, increased wealth within the country, but tons of towns were hollowed out, lots of people lost their jobs, and it had huge political implications. What do you think are going to be the societal and political implications of AI's effect on the job market, sort of concentrating that wealth into the creative class or people who have ownership of these products?
Increasing inequality.
No question.
There's no, it's already happening. Digital technologies has that tendency to increase inequality on one end. On the other hand, the governments and regulation has completely surrendered. It's like the less the better. It's not the right approach in my opinion, but this is what is happening with the internet. This is what is happening with social media. This is the net neutrality is an example of that, in which you say, oh, platforms are not responsible for what they publish. Why? Because we want them to grow. But you see what that makes to public discourse, right? So there's going to be more concentration. Whether they have wealth is going to be reinvested to create more jobs, or where, we don't know.
Or a bigger yacht for Bezos. So.
Right.
Yeah, and not only on an individual level, but even like on a country level. AI will, it's fueling gaps between, job opportunities, productivity, economic growth, between the haves and the have-nots. Those that have the digital infrastructure and or ability to create it, and those that don't have those assets. That's where you really see the gap widening. Definitely already between, let's say, someone who lives in New York City and has access, and someone who is far more remote, but definitely increasing the gaps between, let's say, the U.S. and enter a country here that does not have that infrastructure, which is a problem. Who's going to pick up the slack for that? The World Bank, IMF, with their initiatives? I don't know. Should they? Is that important? I don't know.
Are we even thinking like that, though? Because one of the things that happens is, as you have more inequality, as you have more concentration of wealth and power, because it's not just wealth anymore, right? It's not, Jack Ma, who was at one point the wealthiest man in the world, kinda said, what is this communist party? And he was, boom, he disappeared for 3 years because he didn't have the power. Here, in more democratic, open societies, we have a very big problem because the inequality breeds concentration, right? So, here's the impact of it. I'll give you an example. We know that ChatGPT and all of these AI companies have to build data centers. They go and they say, I need massive amounts of power. They go to Con Edison and say, Con Edison, I need power, man. And Con Edison says, oh, you came to the right place, because Con Edison, he's based on a system of 1950s. The way they make money is they go to the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, and they say, my plan for the next 5 years is to build massive plants. They say, whoa, taxpayers have to pay for that. I say, yeah, but listen, I've got all these customers lined up. That's what's happening right now. So then they go to the PUC, and the PUC says, okay, great. The problem is, Con Edison gets a commitment from the taxpayer in New York State to build some massive amount of power. And even if there are overruns, no matter what it is, New York State says, I will pay you every penny back plus 10%. More corrupt places like in Georgia, they get 15% returns, some obscene amounts guaranteed. So what have we got here now? We got a nice relationship where AI says, I need the power. Con Edison says, no problem. I can make money off that. 10% guaranteed by New York State. Done. And then there is no incentive, and no one is to say, wait a minute, no, we're not going to pay for that. You go figure out a cheaper way to get the power. I don't know how you do it, but whatever it is, you can't count. You're not going to pull all the Con Edison ratepayers to pay for your data center. That's crazy. That will not. It's happening a little bit right now. States are fighting back, but let's see what happens. We're right in that battle right now, where power inequality puts us in a little bit of a bind that could really mess us up in the long run. And again, we have to have the institutions to step in and say, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's do this right. This is wonderful. It's a great thing. AI is amazing. It'll change the world. I feel that way. But let's address the issues.
And I think just to go on that, right, because George, you were talking a little bit about the psychological impact of AI, the loss of control, right? Mm-hmm. But there's also an actual cost. You put these data centers in towns, it raises the electric bills for everybody else involved, and they do not get any of the returns from that. The companies do. So I'd just love to get your thoughts on the economic impact of AI on normal people, and how do you think that's going to affect society?
No, I spoke about that.
Yeah, I know you spoke about that.
Normal being those that don't use AI?
People who don't own the AI data center.
Oh, yeah. It's not, yeah. I mean, I think you said it very well. It's breeds inequality. Should I be paying for, other people's infrastructure? Maybe. Does it, lead to opportunities, social opportunities that I'll benefit from? Maybe. Is everything structured like that, though, right now? No. So it depends. I don't think we have a choice in it, but it does matter. No, I don't think it's fair. But I think it is the way everything has been kind of done, no matter what. We all pay tax for a lot of stuff, most of which we don't use, some of which we do. And I think in aggregate, that's what leads to, functioning society. But no, it's not fair.
And there are also social costs, the social cost, because the mantra has been, well, we're not going to regulate things, because if we regulate, we're going to kill the industry. If we kill the industry will never grow, will never bring all of this, new wealth. And in part, it could be true, because bad regulation can kill an industry. But the reality is, if you look back at the previous industrial revolution, you have the best results when you have technology and good regulation.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of examples, and that's why we have the utility system we have now, the education system we have now, because there was a little bit of at some point the regulator stepped in and did something. It's not perfect, it needs to be changed, and it needs to be current, but there was that tension. But with digital technologies, that never happened. Really, honestly, net neutrality drives me crazy, because if you look at the legislation that was approved, basically saying you are a publishing platform, but you have no publishing responsibilities, right? That's social media, right? That's what it is. It's a publishing platform because we publish on social media, but nobody is responsible. The owner of the platform are not responsible for the content that is being published there, and that was done because at the beginning they were small, and so they thought, well, if we're gonna put responsibility, these platforms will never grow, right?
Wow.
Right, but then they grew. That's what the social cost of that. Social cost is a public discourse that is completely polluted, and the politics that is affected by this pollution, right? When it comes to the example you just made, the social cost is going to be actual pollution, because it's about energy. So if we don't do it in a clean way, in a way that, like you said, go out, and my hope with artificial intelligence was maybe, paradoxically, they're going to help us fight climate change. Why? Because they need cheaper, better energy. So maybe they're going to invest at some point. There's going to be some big breakthrough.
It's the cheapest source of energy.
Right. But you have to have the incentive to go that way. Otherwise,
exactly.
Gas is going to be always cheaper, or easier at least, and that's where they are going right now, because they need it right now. They cannot wait 20 years for the next generation of solar panel, whatever, right? So, but the social cost is going to be more pollution and worsening the climate change situation, and that's something that, again, those who have not pay the higher cost.
If I may, it's also, but I think it's important that we're all sensitized to this, because we're at a juncture that we can impact this. I'll take another example for a second. 2008 financial crisis, right? That, I don't think there's anybody, I don't think I'm saying something new. The banks over-leveraging, whether it was Bear Stearns or whether it was Lehman Brothers and Chase Manhattan and JP Morgan, they caused, essentially, their lack of regulations and over-leveraging caused the financial crisis. And you could some people saw it coming, but afterwards, what did we do? said, "Oh, protect the banks." And so we had social upheaval, I believe, and I think most people would agree, social upheaval in the next 10 years, and this polarization we have in our country is a consequence of people saying, "I lost my house, and Jamie is getting $30 million bonus," right? We're at the same level right now. I think Yorgo mentioned it, or George mentioned it. This is, AI invested, literally made contracts for $1 trillion of commitments to buy energy. That's gonna, I don't know where the money's gonna come from. That's a bubble, right? And clearly the expectation is, well, if we blow it up, you guys are gonna come help us, right? You're not gonna let us go to. That's not gonna be good for social cohesion if we have within 15 years another situation where the world goes to what, and we bail out these people, right? So I think it's important that right now we kind of say, wait a minute. Not stop AI, but to your original question, let's figure out the responsibilities and that we have here.
Well, that's kind of a cultural thing, isn't it? There's a question, right? So take the U.S. Not much regulation in much. Let's say the financial service sector, right? In Europe, far more regulation. It's just the way it is. In Europe, usually when I speak about AI, the first question is regulation. How are we regulating it? Are we regulating it? Why aren't we regulating it? How are we going to think about regulations? And honestly, if we have an hour, 45 minutes is about that, and 50 minutes is about everything else. In the U.S., it's more about what can we do? What's it going to break first? And typically in the U.S., and I'm generalizing, right? Everything I'm saying is wrong in some way. But in the U.S., we'll stop when we break something, clean it up, and then we'll keep going. Now, what's better? I don't know. I have opinions. I'd love yours. In the U.S., financial institutions are responsible for stimulating the economy, making a lot of money, offering opportunities, or taking money away from the have-nots. Probably a little bit of both. But the deregulation or lack of regulation will lead to a meltdown, an economic crisis. There will be consequences, and then we'll bail them out because they drove all this prosperity in theory, and then it'll happen again. In Europe is way behind the curve on productivity, GDP, but all these things, innovation, largely because, not solely, but largely because of this hyper-regulation. But it's more of a social philosophy. You have social healthcare. You have social opportunities. You have far more things coming from the government. The government's expected to set the stage. In the U.S., in large part, you're on your own, and you're going to break stuff, and more people will suffer the consequences. But you get bigger gains, high risk, high reward.
Do you think those gains and those risks and rewards are shared appropriately? In other words,
no, they never are.
That's the problem.
What risks or rewards are ever shared appropriately?
Well, if you take the risk, if you're a trader or whatever, you're wrong. You're going to lose the money. In our examples, Sam Altman was wrong, and we're going to pay.
Of course, that's because of the golden rule, OPM. Other people's money.
But in the history of it, definitely I agree with you that Europe is hyper-regulated and there are other issues there. But the United States had a history that was very different until going back to the previous industrial revolutions. Big tobacco, because at some point some doctors showed it's bad for your health, it was heavily penalized.
Yeah.
Now there's tons of work showing that social media are very bad for young people, psychologically. Do you think something's going to happen? It's the same country, right? So, and it was entrepreneurial back then, even more probably because nobody was really counting on being bailed out. Now they know because there's a precedent. Right?
Yeah, there's a precedent.
Do you think it's going to happen that social media company will be severely, regulated because there's evidence of impact of health?
Only when we break something, when like 25% of all people on social start dying or something. Short of
Depression.
that,
There's a massive depression, mental illness.
oh yeah.
Which I think is studies have tied it to social media, right? I mean, I don't have an.
Oh yeah, suicide rates, depression, lack of productivity, sleep. There are so many negative impacts, of course. Will it be regulated? Probably not, unless it is, again, like a mass, something bad happens. Should it be regulated? I don't know. It should be. How many people want government to be in control of how much you use social media? Oh, so there's a maybe. It depends. But, okay,
Government is never the answer, it's only the problem.
that is fair.
That is not true. That is a myth that has been driving us for the last 30 years. That is exactly wrong. Most of the technology that AI is built on, and everything from GPS to you name it, is a collective good. And to the professor's comments earlier, the fact that these people have access to all of our work, start with something simple like Wikipedia, and they claim it as their own, is not right. And it's not because because private sector does it. Private sector has the government, and that's our collective activity has been.
But you're talking about
Go ahead.
technology.
So go ahead, gentlemen.
Professor,
Yeah, go ahead.
I also want to push back on that. So every single important technology since before even World War I, every single one that's moved the dial globally has been the result specifically of the United States Department of Defense. It has nothing to do with the private sector's there to pick up the crumbs that are left behind. There's a reason why the internet took off here. It's because our country invented the internet. Our country built the internet. It didn't happen in Indonesia, right? It happened here because the government did that. You said the GPS, the fighter plane, the communication satellite, the internet, the microprocessor, semiconductor, all of these things are United States Department of Defense. It's not even America. It's specifically United States Department of Defense, and not even the whole.
Not to mention all the research stuff that has come out, which is government-funded research, whether it's MIT or Harvard or whoever has that. We are funding these things. So what we did wrong was.
Let's be clear. We pivoted. I agree with you on that. We pivoted from technology that was developed by a bunch of smart people. We're now elected to a bunch of bureaucrats telling us what to do with Facebook. Let's just be clear about what just happened here. We were talking about the question was, do we want government to come in and regulate how we live our lives? We didn't say that's
That's a silly question.
Oh no.
Can I ask what the panel thinks about Australia's decision to ban 16-year-olds and below?
TikTok, right?
Well, no, I think social media generally.
Yeah.
That decision was made yesterday. Is that the first of many, or do you think it's?
I think that this is a very loose opinion. Why didn't the internet destroy people? I think it's because it started very slow. Internet was very slow. You had to have a computer to access it. It would take an hour to do anything. You had dial-up. And so there was a learning curve that people could handle. AI and social media was, here you go, here it is. What are you going to do with it? It's like handing someone fire for the first time. It's just going to start lighting everything on fire. So the learning curve was too steep, and lack of parenting to teach kids, all these things. So the impact was too aggressive because we didn't know how to handle it. Okay, and about like education and stuff, why are we not teaching ethics? Not ethical AI, just ethics at school. Why don't kids generally? Well, in Italy, in Europe, far more. Yeah, but why don't kids cheat? Because they've been taught at a very young age, do not cheat, don't copy, blah blah. Now this whole Gen AI thing, getting ChatGPT, no one's really teaching them not to do it, and the learning curve was too steep, so we don't know how to handle it ethically, morally, personally, professionally. I think and so to answer your question a little bit more directly, like how do I feel about Australia and their decision? I'm not sure. It said that we need these binary decisions because people haven't evolved. We haven't had the opportunity to learn how to handle things like the internet. Maybe that's a solution. Maybe things need to be throttled. Maybe next time we discover something like generative AI, which is like fire, we throttle it and slowly release it on people. I don't know. That's unrealistic, of course. How would you do that? Should you do that? All these questions. But it is a different perspective of thinking why it's a problem, as opposed to should we do anything about it? Well, let's start with the why. I don't think we're smart enough to handle that kind of responsibility yet.
And I think my next question ties into that, right? Because no matter how we've gotten here, who's responsible for that, we are here where AI is a huge part of our lives and we have to deal with the externalities of that. How do we start preparing people who are going to college or going to high school for that future? What should we be teaching them? How should we be rethinking our universities and thinking our job training programs to prepare society for the future?
I will pass it on to somebody who's more ensconced in the academic world, because I don't have an answer or a clue, to be honest with you. That's a very difficult question. So, Luca.
Well, I mean, I don't. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, nobody really knows at the moment, but we're trying to, do something about it, because definitely these technologies have not been designed for learning, right? These have been designed for productivity. Now, when you learn, productivity is not your priority, right? Learning takes time, takes reflection, takes mistakes. This is a completely different logic and environment than what could be the use of AI in a professional or business context. But the problem is these LLMs have been created to increase productivity. So we are in an extreme need. Something is happening. Some companies are trying to develop. I just today attended one of those demos. Platforms that are AI based and are designed for learning. What that means in practice, a few things. For instance, I'm trying to put, because probably we're going to buy one. I don't know, at St. John's, right? So we're looking into different options. So what are the criteria? And I'm trying to make a list so that we can compare, right? There's not a lot to compare so far, honestly, but some products are being launched. So one is the platform has to be specifically designed for learning, number one. Number two, it does have to have some level of graduality in the way AI is adopted, because there's no one size fits all. In some classes you need AI, in some other classes you don't need AI, in some other classes you need some AI. Foundational skills that kids need to acquire before they are ready to use AI needs to be probably taught without AI at the very beginning, so that when they are mature enough and good enough and grown up enough, they can use AI in a proper way. I'm thinking, writing. A lot of people are worried about writing. Let me say that. I'm worried about reading. Why? Because you can ask AI to read for you and do a summary. Now, if you think a lot of learning is summarizing, why? Because when you make a summary, it's your takeaway. Your summary is going to be different than my summary, than Dimitri's summary, than George's summary of the same thing. That's your angle. That's what you understood of the thing, right? This process is so important at the beginning, because that's where you form your critical thinking, your ability to articulate complex thoughts. If we take that and we give it to a machine and say, give me a summary, that's the end of it. If we have this type of kids and they become senior, what kind of AI are we going to give it to them? They don't have the cognitive tools to use it properly. So there are some levels on which I'm personally, this coding is one of those. You learn to code before you use AI for coding. You need to know what good code is, what bad code is. And if you don't try yourself, you don't muscle, your mind in a way that you can code properly, You are not going to be able to use AI with a 10,000, 100,000 line of code, and that is helpful because, of course, it's a good tool. But there's a step that we are trying to bypass.
I think automation and augmentation is shifting the value of certain skills, right? Let's continue on the thread of coding. Who here codes? All right. Who here speaks English? Okay, that's the new coding. Eventually, right? Not now, but it is. No, it's not perfect now. No, you still need coders, of course. But we said you used to need 10 coders, now you need 1. So yeah, you don't need as many coders. And I do see a future in which you won't need any. Architects don't know how to lay brick necessarily. I don't think architects necessarily need to know the consistency of the cement. They just need to know what they want to build, and they, automate the rest through manual labor, which when 3D printing of buildings, continues to evolve, that'll be gone too. But again, the value of skills is shifting, and it is changing. Is that right? Again, I don't know. I think some things are, some things are not.
Is there a danger in education that if we artificially withhold teaching of AI skills, right, and there's going to be there is an arms race to learn these skills quickly. Is there a danger if we approach things from a sort of gradual, the way you described, and then other universities are not doing that, and that we're not therefore preparing students as well for what they face the moment they leave the university? I don't know whether there's obviously it's too early for there to be a collective perspective on the interface between AI and pedagogy, and it would be great if there was, but do you see dangers in what you described earlier, this sort of gradual approach where, and I understand where that's coming from, but I could see risks?
I don't know. I think the graduality doesn't mean withholding. Just understanding what's the process of learning, what are the fundamentals, building block of that process, and understanding where AI is making damage and where AI is not making damage. I think that AI is a great tool, and I've seen it, at least, in my experience. Probably you've seen it too. You give the same technology to different type of people. It could be, let me say, not to students, to professors. Like, they can do very, very different things with that technology. Why? Because one is a creative person, because this person has a different cognitive capital that can use to leverage the potential of that technology. For me, for our institutions, universities, especially at the beginning, and especially in this country, which high school is not that great, let's face it, okay? We have that moment in which students transition from high school to higher education. There are very, very formative years. Now, will that slow down the process a little bit? Yes, but it doesn't matter, because after they will catch up if they have the right cognitive infrastructure and capital and tools and critical thinking and ability to speak English, in the sense of articulating ideas in a better way. When you articulate ideas in a better way, you can tell a machine, please do this for me. But if you are poor at articulating your thought, you'll never be able to tell a machine what to do, right? Or at least to do something decent that is good enough. So I'm not worried. I don't think we have to rush. But this doesn't mean that we have to ban AI, or we have to purposefully shield our students from using AI.
I think we need to rethink our educational system. I mean, with or without AI, we need to do that, but especially with AI. And as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. Now everyone has a lot of power. Are we teaching them enough responsibility? I think not. Again, now we have 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds that have the power to do almost anything. Are we teaching them ethics? Sure, but are we teaching them responsibility? Are we teaching them to be good people? Are we turning that responsibility, that education, into a culture or not? I think it would be naive for me to believe that we would or that we will, but it could possibly serve as a North Star as to where we should be headed. I don't think AI is going to stop, the development of AI and its power is not going to go down. It's only going to increase exponentially. To my knowledge, from the few things that I've learned in my few years on this planet, the only thing I can imagine kind of throttling it is a culture, a society that learns to respect it and use it appropriately. I don't know how to do that.
Okay. So we only have 1 minute left, about 1 minute ago. But I'd like to just go down the line and get everybody's final thoughts on sort of this whole discussion and where we think the future goes according to like AI.
Well, I want to say, like, I'm very optimistic. I would share George's sort of enthusiasm for AI. I do think it'll transform the world. Doesn't matter if it's intelligent or not. There's no question in my mind. Productivity will go through the roof as a species. Our capacity as humans could potentially be enhanced tremendously. And also, frankly, the gentleman's question before, the Western world is aging, and it's great to have robots that can do stuff, It's good. So I'm in general, a huge techno-optimist in that context. I think, however, it is absolutely imperative for our institutions to think about the issues of education, to think about the issues of inequality, and to address them now, because if we don't, the social disruption that is inevitable is going to be much more traumatic. And not to conclude on a sad point, but on a negative point, but I don't think we have, because of whatever situation, certainly the Western world as it's constructed right now does not have, our institutions don't have the credibility or the impetus to do that. And that's where the risk lies.
For me, the priority remains, and I agree with George that many things have to change, but I think universities must continue to do their best effort to train great humans. Great humans will figure it out. Students who are creative, motivated, good problem solver, responsible, that have the cognitive and moral capital to deal with the novelty, will deal with the novelty better than those who don't. And that's the challenge. And sometimes racing toward catching up with the skills and the latest trend, we tend to forget that. I'm not anxious, and that might be my also recommendation or advice to the students in the room. Don't be anxious. You figure it out. Just become great humans, meaning develop your cognitive capital as much as you can. Technology always changes. New technology will always come. But if you're good problem solvers, you figure it out. So our duty, our moral imperative is to help you to build that layer, that infrastructure, so that you can thrive, whatever happens out there.
I agree with everything that everyone just said. I would add that I would love to see us redefine or define maybe what success actually means. Is success productivity? Maybe. Using AI, I could make more tables. Who cares? Is that important? What's the most important thing? Is it preserving human agency, decision making? Is it preserving humanity? It's something, but I know it's not just productivity, because now I can make more paint or something. I know it's not that. I don't know what it is. I'd love to see a little bit more of that tied into, how we define successful use of AI. I think that would be a good, perhaps naive, but a good North Star. And I don't think we have one. And I know it's not productivity in everything.
Thank you all so much for coming and having this conversation with us. I really appreciate it.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. In closing, I'm going to borrow a story that I learned from the recent Capital Link Maritime Forum, which I think a couple of us were attending. So once upon a time, because I'm a storyteller, once upon a time there was a captain, and he and his crew were caught in this terrible storm, right? And there were so many disruptions and so many, things, and everyone was in a panic. And the captain looked at his helmsman and said, "You have one job. You're going to look at the compass. Don't look at anything else. Don't listen to anybody else. You hear nothing. You're just looking at the compass." And the helmsman got very anxious, right? And he panicked, right? And the captain looked at him and said, "No, focus. You're going to do this. This is your job. Because if you lose focus of this, we're not going to get to where we need to be." And so really what I want to close with is this Aristotelian concept of mindfulness. And those of you who have had the torture of being in class with me know that everything has to relate back to Aristotle in some way and to mindfulness in some other way, right? So unapologetically, really a good leader, a strong leader is going to take the chaos that seems to be AI today in its present state and be able to focus without getting sidetracked. They're going to be the compass for the next generation. But in order for our leaders to know, we need to know where the disruptions are for you guys, where the noise is for you, where the panic is, where problems are. So I encourage you to please, please, please take advantage of our amazing mentors, okay? And come back, yes?